to the Daily Bite. I'm your host, Pastor Steve Andrews.
Daniel chapter 11 today is perhaps one of the most difficult chapters in Scripture that I've prepped for this podcast, and I don't think I'm going to be able to walk you through it quite the same way as I normally do. Instead of going through the whole text and then reviewing at the end, I think we're going to take this one a paragraph at a time, as I tend to do in the Layman's Guide to the Lectionary, because there's just so many details here that we'd miss it. And honestly, if you're a history lover, Reverend Dr. Andrew Steinman's commentary on the book of Daniel from the Concordia Commentary series from Concordia Publishing House has probably about a dozen pages on this, starting at page 518 or so. You'd love it. There's so much here. This is a prophecy, a vision, a prophecy of something historically that's going to come to pass. And it's a lot of kings, and it's a lot of battle, and it's a lot of intrigue in the court, all that kind of stuff going on. So let's dig in. Let's take it a paragraph at a time and see what we can figure out and what I can share with you about this text. As for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a 4th shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he will stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, nor according to the authority with which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. So, this is the man from yesterday's text, chapter 10, verse 5, whether this is the angel or this is Jesus. You can make arguments either way. This is the man speaking. So Jesus speaking or an angel speaking that we see here. This occurred in the first year of Darius the Mede, or Cyrus. 539 BC is what we're talking about. In essence, what we're going to be looking at is it's going to be like jumping ships as we track different kingdoms. This is not all one kingdom that we're looking at. So we're going to have verse 2 is going to be its own thing. Verses 3 and 4 will be a second kingdom, like if you want to look at this as jumping ship from one ship to the next and then keeping going in a different direction almost. 5 through 35 is another kingdom. And then verse 36 through tomorrow, chapter 12, verse 4, is another. And so we're going to look at those. The first kingdom is Persia. 3 and 4 is Greece. 5 through 35 is the battle between 2 separate kingdoms. You've got Syria, the Seleucid Empire, I think, if I'm saying that right, and the Ptolemaic Empire down in Egypt, if I said that one right. Verse 36 and onward into tomorrow is going to be the kingdom of the Antichrist. So a very different thing. Verses 1 through 35 are history. Verse 36 onward is future from our perspective. So, what you can ask your children to start today, is the Bible real? Like, is it actual history? Did this stuff really happen? The answer to that is yes, but that's the question. That's what we wrestle with today. That's what so many people, even unfortunately within the church, don't believe, is that these things are real. They'll try and argue that there's no way this could have been prophesied hundreds of years before it happened. Like they say that with Isaiah. Isaiah in the 700s BC forecasted that Cyrus would be the name of the king that overthrows the exiling nation of Babylon. Cyrus is the name of the king. So they make the argument he couldn't have known that, so it must not have been written until after Cyrus defeated Babylon. Critical scholarship today rules out all prophecy, which is a major problem for obvious reasons for the church. So I personally wholesale reject most scholarship of our age. It's really hard to find good, faithful people who are doing that work. So I've mentioned Dr. Steinman. It's a good one. His commentary on this seems to be pretty helpful. All right, so what's going on here? Well, you've got 3 more kings in Persia after Cyrus. It would be Cyrus goes from 539 to 530, Cambyses II from 530 to 522, Bardia, 522, very short, Darius the First or Darius the Great from 522 to 486, And then the fourth king that'll be far richer than them all would be Xerxes the First, 486 to 465. Xerxes is also going to be the one for the book of Esther that marries Esther as his queen. Now, this rich king, Xerxes, will fight against Greece. Xerxes goes to war with Greece in 480 and loses. At this point, we jump ship. We move from Persia to the next empire. It's not that Persia's done. They'll have several more kings. 8 more kings after that before they finally fall, eventually to Greece. But for the meantime, this text is going to leave them in the dust. It's going to go to Greece. The mighty king shall arise is a reference to Alexander the Great, as we had back in chapter 8's vision as well. He's going to have great dominion, do as he wills. His kingdom, however, will be broken and divided to the 4 winds. This was chapter 8, verse 22. Greece, Asia Minor, Syria, and Egypt. Syria and Egypt are the 2 we'll follow in the text that comes up next. It's not his posterity, so it doesn't go to his children. If I remember correctly, Alexander the Great doesn't have children. It's not going to be with his authority because it's taken and scattered instead of all authority in one place. So verse 5, that paragraph, verses 5 and 6. Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he and shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority. After some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure. But she shall be given up in her attendance, he who fathered her, and he who supported her in those times. So what we have here is the start of these 2 of the 4. We're not following all 4 kingdoms, just 2 of them. The Ptolemaic line in Egypt, this is pretty easy. They named all their kings Ptolemy, Ptolemy. So we have the first, who reigns from 323 to 285. Then we'll have the second, that's the prince after him, Ptolemy II, 285 to 246. We'll also have the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and the 6th as the chapter continues, so it makes it really easy to remember their names. Anyway, he has great authority, the son does. After some years, he makes an alliance with that northern kingdom of Syria, and these are not the sizes of lands that you're used to. Egypt stretches all the way up to Syria, right? They end up bordering each other, and the land of Jerusalem, Judah, is kind of stuck in the middle of that. So what we see here is that this southern king, Ptolemy II, gives his daughter, Berenice, to the king of the north, Antiochus II. Antiochus II ruled Syria from 261 to 246. That kicked his current wife out in order to make this alliance with the southern kingdom. Eventually, she comes back in. Berenice is killed, and as you see in the rest of this paragraph, basically Berenice's family is killed as well. Her attendants, her father, and any that supported her is wiped out. Her son does not get the throne of the Seleucid Empire in Syria. Instead, the first wife, I don't know how to say her name, Laodice, Laodice, she takes over again, and it'll be through her children that kingdom continues. But verse 7, a branch from her roots, so Berenice, her roots would be her parents. A branch is going to be another offshoot. So this is her brother. That's Ptolemy III, 246 to 221 he reigns. He avenges his sister's death. Like, they murdered his sister. So he's going after, he takes an army up to the kingdom of the north and fights against them. He's victorious in that fight, in that battle, that we see there in verse 8. So let's look at that. From a branch from her roots, one shall arise in his place. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he shall deal with them and shall prevail. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods and their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold. And for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. So after a victorious campaign for Ptolemy III against the northern kingdom, the northern king is going to come and fight against him and fail. That's Seleucus, Seleucus II. He reigned from 246 to 226 over the northern kingdom of Syria. Seleucus's children, Seleucus III will reign from 226 to 223, and his brother Antiochus III from 223 to 187. They'll go to war against the south. Antiochus III, a little more success, carrying all the way through to the fortress of the south. The king of the south at that point is going to be Ptolemy IV, 221 to 204. He reigned. He's going to raise a great multitude. His heart's exalted, so he presses his attack, but he fails. The king of the north will fight back and push back. So you see a lot of this back and forth happening. Let's read that paragraph, verses 10 through 13. His son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again carry the war as far as his fortress. Then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north. He shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. When the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted, and he shall cast down tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail. For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude greater than the first, and after some years he shall come on with a great army and abundant supplies. I'm going to keep going into the next paragraph, 14 to 19. In those times many shall rise against the king of the south, and the violent among your own people shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. Then the king of the north shall come and throw up siege works and take a well-fortified city. The forces of the south shall not stand, or even his best troops, for there shall be no strength to stand. But he who comes against him shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his hand. He shall set his face to come with the strength of his whole kingdom. He shall bring terms of an agreement and perform them. He shall give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand or be to his advantage. Afterward he shall turn his face to the coastlands, and shall capture many of them. But a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him. Then he shall turn his face back toward the fortresses of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and shall not be found. So, paragraph starting at 14, we now have Ptolemy V reigning from 204 to 181 as the king of the south, but he starts at the age of 5. That's an invitation for the enemies to attack, and they do, historically speaking, including Antiochus III. But you see here in verse 14, even the Jews, even Daniel's people are going to attack, as the angel or Jesus is speaking to Daniel. That fails, but the efforts of the other nations against the south don't fail. A lot of victory there, a lot of defeat for Ptolemy V. Eventually, verse 17, an alliance is made, not a very good one. It's a trick. Antiochus gives his daughter, so Syria gives his daughter Cleopatra I to Ptolemy V as his wife in hopes, as we see here, to destroy the kingdom. He trusts his daughter is going to undermine Ptolemy V from within and allow that Egyptian nation to crumble so he can take it for himself. She, however, ends up becoming loyal to Ptolemy, siding with her new husband instead of with her father. And so his plans, Dad's plans, do not stand. They do not come to his advantage. Eventually, after capturing some of the coastlands, Antiochus III is pressed by the Romans into a treaty, the Treaty of Apamea, and that includes him becoming a Roman vassal. It includes hostages taken from him. That's the insolence being turned back upon him here. This happens in 188. He doesn't live much longer. He lives till 187 because he was trying to, as a Roman vassal, he had to pay tribute to Rome. He was trying to fight various peoples, even within his own land, to retake some of that money that he would need to pay Rome, and they rose up against him and killed him. Verse 20, that paragraph, then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. In his place shall arise a contemptible person to whom royal majesty had not been given. He shall come in without warning and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. And from the time that an alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, and he shall become strong with a small people. Without warning, he shall come into the richest parts of the province, and he shall do what neither his fathers nor his fathers' fathers have done, scattering among them plunder, spoil, and goods. He shall devise plans against strongholds, but only for a time, and he shall stir up his power and his heart against the king of the south with a great army. The king of the south shall wage war with an exceedingly great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for plots shall be devised against him. Even those who eat his food shall break him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. As for the two kings, their hearts shall be bent on doing evil. They shall speak lies at the same table, but to no avail. for the end is yet to be at the time appointed. And he shall return to his land with great wealth, but his heart shall be set against the holy covenant, and he shall work his will and return to his own land. So the king that arises in his place, Seleucus IV, he reigns from 187 to 175. He sends Heliodorus, the exactor of tribute, to pillage Jerusalem, the glory of the kingdom, to pillage the Jerusalem temple, to pay that Roman obligation of his father. When he passes away, see, he's broken in a few days, neither in anger nor in battle. His brother Antiochus IV is going to take over in 175. He'll reign until 164. What's happening here in verse 21 then, Antiochus does not have the right to the throne. Seleucus' son should have taken the throne. That would be Demetrius. But Antiochus, who had been one of those hostages taken by Rome when dad, Antiochus III, had become the Roman vassal in that treaty, Antiochus is able to successfully maneuver his way back into the kingdom and into power in Syria. And he takes that instead of it going to Demetrius. So that's what's happening there. He shall sweep away even the prince of the covenant. That's a reference to the covenant being God's people. The prince there, the greatest of God's people, probably here a reference to the high priest, as the Jews don't really have their own governing authority anymore. That's been swept up in this Persian Empire. As you go on, verse 25, he goes against the king of the south. At this point, that's Ptolemy VI, who reigns from 181 to 146. Ptolemy VI will fight back, but his fight will not last because the information is leaked from his kingdom that he is going to fight against Antiochus, so that harms his chances of battle success. The two kings continue to fight. Their hearts are bent on evil against each other. They make an alliance at the same table together at Memphis, but it's to no avail. They're fighting because God is still in control. The end is yet to be at the time appointed. God is in control of all things. God reigns. Remember that, the theme of the book. All right, verse 29 through 35. At the time appointed he shall return and come into the south, but it shall not be this time as it was before. For ships of Kittim shall come against him, and he shall be afraid and withdraw, and shall turn back and be enraged and take action against the holy covenant. He shall turn back and pay attention to those who forsake the holy covenant. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering. They shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. He shall seduce them with flattery, those who violate the covenant. But the people who know their God shall stand firm and take action. And the wise among the people shall make many understand, though for some days they shall stumble by sword and flame, by captivity and plunder. When they stumble, they shall receive a little help, and many shall join themselves to them with flattery, and some of the wise shall stumble, so that they may be refined, purified, and made white, until the time of the end, for it still awaits the appointed time. So Antiochus IV is going to come against Ptolemy VI, but the Romans stop him. Ships of Kittim is off in the Mediterranean Sea. The Romans come against him instead, and they force him to withdraw. This is a fulfillment actually of Balaam's prophecy from Numbers 24, verses 17 through 24 is what you'd want to look at there. Balaam, who had been hired to curse God's people of Israel, and instead ended up blessing them. That's really shorthand of that account. Balaam predicted that there would be a star, a reference to Jesus, the Star of Bethlehem idea, Numbers 24:17, who would defeat all these kingdoms. But in the meantime, part of the prophecy in Numbers 24:24 mentioned ships of Kittim, a reference to the Romans that would come and destroy the previous kingdoms. So this is your only reference to a Messiah showing up in this chapter today, in Daniel 11. Now, Antiochus is going to, instead of attacking Egypt, he's going to press against Jerusalem, against the Jews, and he's going to really harshly impact them. He's going to make it punishable by death to circumcise your child, to celebrate the feast days of Yahweh, to make one of the sacrifices of the described in the book of Leviticus, to possess Scripture. All of these normal things for God's people are now outlawed. He sets up an idol of Zeus in God's holy temple, the abomination that makes desolate. He does all these things. First Maccabees picks up on some of this idea in the apocryphal book. Now, verse 32, Antiochus will mislead some of God's people, those who are willing to violate the covenant, but some of the people will stand firm. The wise, in verse 33, is a reference to the faithful. They will help others to understand, so they'll be sharing their faith with others, but they will stumble. They will be persecuted by sword, flame, captivity, and plunder. So they'll face lots of persecution, lots of hardship. They'll receive a little help. It's a reference perhaps to the brotherly encouragement, that when you're suffering, your brother can support you, encourage you, lift you up, your brother in faith. However, there will be deceivers among them, so they'll join them with flattery, and some of the wise, some of the faithful will stumble, that they may be refined. Here's the purpose of all this, why God is allowing, verse 35, this persecution under Antiochus, to refine his people, to purify them, to make them white. Jesus, Revelation 1:14, described it as being white, not as in skin color, but his clothing white, radiant. The Father was described that way back in Daniel 7, verse 9, the Almighty of days. The saints in Revelation 7 are described this way, that they've made their robes white in the blood of the Lamb. Those are the kinds of texts that we're looking at here, with the idea that the saints will be made white in the blood of the Lamb. Antiochus IV's persecution actually serves God's purpose of refining the Jewish people, so that what you have left is the faithful who are looking forward to their Messiah coming. The other question you can ask your kids today, are any of these rulers good? I mean, this is 1 Samuel 8 stuff, that rulers are going to be evil, no matter who that ruler might be in this world. When you have a sinner in charge with governing authority, they will abuse it. They will harm their people. There is a fourth section we talked about, starting at verse 36. This is no longer an earthly king in the same sense. You can't peg this one down to history. This is the Antichrist. This is an eschatological king, so someone who will come at the end of days, which is why you're going to see that phrase. We just saw it in verse 35 for the time of the end. I'm going to finish today's text because we're over time. I'm just going to read this part about it. This is future. We don't know who this is, who this might be. This could be a reference to the devil, so think of it that way. It could be a specific earthly figure of great power that is set up over many nations in the time to come. Hard to say. Hear the text, consider it, trust in the Lord. Our God reigns. He saves us by Jesus. We will reign with him forever, no matter what this Antichrist may throw at us. We end with the verses 36 to 45. The king shall do as he wills. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished. For what is decreed shall be done. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or to the one beloved by women. He shall not pay attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. He shall honor the God of fortresses instead of these, a God whom his fathers did not know. He shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. Those who acknowledge him he shall load with honor. He shall make them rulers over many, and shall divide the land for a price. At the time of the end the king of the south shall attack him, but the king of the north shall rush upon him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen and many ships. He shall come into countries and shall overflow and pass through. He shall come into the glorious land, that would be the promised land. Tens of thousands shall fall, but these shall be delivered out of his hand. Edom and Moab and the main part of the Ammonites. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall become ruler of the treasures of gold and of silver, and all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Cushites shall follow in his train. But news from the east and the north shall alarm him, and he shall go out with great fury to destroy and devote many to destruction. And he shall pitch his palatial tent between the sea and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end with none to help him. This is the word of the Lord.